Welcome to episode 22 of season 4 of the Gateway Geeks Podcast. This time we discuss Godzilla vs. Kong, Jim Jarmusch, cultural appropriation, late 90s hip-hop mainstays, and feudal Japanese culture. Let's get started with your hosts, Joe, Tracy, Chris, Aaron, and Wendy. Okay, so welcome everybody to season 4, episode 22 of the Gateway Geeks Podcast. This time we have a pretty full house. We're missing Sarah. So this time we watched Jarmusch movie and it's Godzilla versus King Kong, right?
Godzilla versus Kong.
Yeah. But Godzilla versus Kong. Yeah. So we're going to talk about that. And for our game, we have to pick Team Kong or Team Godzilla. And I'm Team Godzilla because I appreciate his much more straightforward metaphor. So I'm Team Godzilla. What about you, Wendy?
I'm going to be a total kaiju nerd and go Shin Godzilla, not legendary Godzilla, because he could totally kick their asses. Because his shtick is that he's constantly evolving, and also because I had issues with the character portrayals in this particular movie. Aaron has a good take on this.
I'm Aaron, and I'm going to go a little bit meta. I am obviously going to go with Team Godzilla, but because of the film franchise, one was built on the idea of a people working through recent trauma, and the other is built on really bad racist undertones and origins. So Team Godzilla all the way.
Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris, and as a big hairy ape, I am Team Kong. I'm a mammal supremacist. Skull Island was a way better movie than Godzilla or Destroy All Monsters. Godzilla was okay. Destroy All Monsters sucked horribly. Skull Island, and honestly, like as far as this franchise go, yeah, because I love this version of Kong. He's my big hairy friend. He has facial expressions and can relate to living things and can do all those things that lizards aren't famously good at. Plus, it's they make it more interesting because they do Air Bud rules, and there's nothing in the rules that says that Kong can't have a magic axe.
Yeah. Sarah, Tracy.
I'm not sure y'all can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, awesome. My little screen isn't lighting up around my head, so it makes me think you can't hear me. So hi, I'm Tracy, and I am Team Kong. I like the facial expressions too. I also like the signing of Kong in this version. So that got my heartstrings pulled. So liking Kong.
Yeah. That's fair. I also like how Kong didn't like the one sign language interpreter lady, and so he just signed with the child. I thought that was a very mammal thing to do. I don't know. That that resonated with me. So we got a few things.
The child is his kitten,
right?
So
right.
Kong's kitten, Coco's kitten.
Yep.
Oh goodness, she's
Coco.
all ball.
Yep.
So there are a few things we could talk about, but we were talking about this a little bit before we started. There's this new pretty cool pen and paper RPG coming out called Coyote and Crow, and it's based around. It's not really based on a specific first people mythology, but it's made by a native writer, and it's got a giant team of native artists and all this stuff. And it's kind of allowing you to, I don't know, interact with maybe an abstracted version of a collective First Peoples mythology. So I don't know, Aaron, do you want to give your take? Because I think you kind of nailed some of the potential problems with this.
Well, I mean, let me start off by saying I really love the idea that there are increasingly more and more tabletop RPGs that are not written with me as the default a player. Like there's one that I just heard about called Thirsty Lesbians with Swords. It's which while I suspect I could enjoy playing that game, I am not the target player. And I like that there's more inclusion, and also there.
Oh no, did we lose Aaron?
And Aaron has disappeared again. Aaron, you've disappeared again.
Okay, good.
Oh no, wait, now we can hear. Poor Aaron.
Was that?
Now we can hear you, but your visual has been frozen for a long time.
Okay, so let's. So I'm going to go with just being a voice for then.
Turn your camera off.
All right. Yep. Let me make sure I don't unplug the wrong thing.
Continue to be a voice for the native peoples.
Yep. Okay. So
there we go.
All right. So when did I voice out? Never mind. All right. So so I to reiterate, I like the fact that there are more tabletop RPG games that are being developed that are inviting more people to the table that aren't just white dude as the default, and also helping. Providing avenues for people to form their own tables. That having been said, while I'm really curious to read this RPG that Joe has described, I'd have to read it to determine if I would be comfortable putting on the hat of playing a character in that realm without feeling just a little bit awkward. Again, I haven't read the rules, so I don't know if if there's material in there that would address me being uncomfortable. And on the flip side of that is, it might not be a terrible thing for me, a white dude, to be a little uncomfortable.
Yeah. I mean, one wonders if, I just think of the 90s when you had like Duke Nukem and Doom and all of those coming out where the protagonist was like big muscly white guy. Yeah. I feel like there must have been a bunch of gamers who are like, this doesn't really represent me too accurately. Yeah. So it's probably
to another extent though, there's the whole wish fulfillment thing going on there. That's different. I'm vaguely familiar with the Coyote and Crow. I went, oh, that's interesting. I'm glad that I hope that gets funded. But touching the idea of comfort in gaming, before the pandemic, we'd planned to start a Blue Rose campaign, which, when we all had back when we all still had free brain cells. And I wanted to play a character that is their world equivalent of Romany. And I sat with the game master, and then I sat with the players, and I'm like, I want to know where our level of comfort is on this, because these are people that are stereotyped, and this game tries to not be too stereotypical, but it is. So would you feel more comfortable if I used the language of actual Romany people, use the actual proper words, or would that be less respectful, or should I pitch it like using fictional terms from a fictional Romany analog? And we had some really good discussions about it. Like, which is less? Is it more respectful for me to try and use people proper words if I'm not part of those people, or should I just not do it? Should I, take that step away? And it's one of those things that it's good we're having these discussions. I ended up settling on the side of the fictional, playing it like a fictional character just for my own comfort. Although I have used what I know. Being a Renaissance Fair performer, I've met a certain number of Romany people and similar. And so I try to be respectful, but again, I was like, this is stepping on some toes here. And I would like to be as respectful as possible.
Sure. And I mean, I think that gives us a chance. We could talk about like cultural appropriation when we talk about Ghost Dog, definitely. But I mean, it also kind of makes me think of the whole Latinx thing. Like, I read a few articles this last week. They were just talking about how if you speak to actual people who we would consider to be Latinx, it's not as though most Hispanic people choose that term. It's like a subset of people, it is probably like younger people. I mean, you'd have to look at the demographics.
I became familiar with it through John Piccaccio and the Mexicanics project that they did at Worldcon, the Mexicanics Initiative, where he basically got 50 young people, artists, creatives of Mexican descent, and got together a fund to bring them all to Worldcon. Mm-hmm. But there are, I mean, it's when we get into it, we get into making blanket word choices, we have to let people choose their own words, and that is complicated sometimes. It's not, you can't say don't use this word, don't use that word. There's obvious, this is a slur, this isn't, or if someone says to you, please don't use that. But there are people who prefer still Latina or Latino. There are people who believe that Latinx is artificial and it should be Latine. Right. I see that, but I don't get to decide that. So I just kind of keep an eye on it to make sure if the general consensus that I see is that I should use a different word, I will try and remember to use a different word.
Right.
Yeah, and there's a real split that I keep seeing with native Spanish speakers of various national descents who politically understand what Latinx is getting at, and then quickly point out that it is literally an impossible word to say in the middle of a sentence in Spanish. It's a language that is heavily built on words ending in consonants, and then they throw the hardest possible vowel at the end of this new word. And for actual Spanish speakers, it's a literal linguistic landmine.
Yeah. Right. And I mean, I think what Wendy was saying is kind of the key there, is like when you encounter an individual, you find out what they prefer and you go with that. I think that's probably a good rule of thumb.
There was a great cartoon I saw where somebody said, do you prefer to be disabled or handicapped? And the person replies, my name's Jim.
Yeah. So. We watched for at my job at the campus, they showed Deej. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. It's about a non-speaking autistic person going to college and like everything he has to go through. It's on PBS a lot. But they actually had DJ Savarese, I think is how you say his last name, who is the person that I was talking about. And he was in the discussion group, and he has it used to be called a Liberator, but it's like the device where you type in it and then it makes like a voice and it reads. And so he was using that, and his thing was very interesting. It's like everyone who was watching the documentary was just to the point of like, oh, okay, we use the term nonverbal autistic person because that's what the director used. And then he, in the group meetings, was like, no, it's not nonverbal because I still make noises. Like, it's non-speaking. It's because I'm not forming like what you would call words, even though he can say kind of like his mom's name. Like he can speak a little bit, but yeah, there's a lot going on there. So do we want to talk about Ghost Dog first, Chris, or do you want to say something about Dead Man? Because we didn't get to watch that again.
Oh God, just for the purpose of brevity, I love Dead Man. Like I love Westerns. It falls firmly in that. A lot of times it gets roped in as like an anti-Western, because it does come from that mid-90s era of the anti-Westerns, and it is. I think Jim Jarmusch was more fond of calling it like an acid Western or psychedelic Western. I have to admit I'm an old man, and I do enjoy Neil Young, and the entire score is literally just Neil Young on a guitar, and he did most of the scoring actually while watching the movie and just playing over it, reacting to it as he's watching it. Look, oh God, okay, I'm gonna say a lot of dumb things, so just mute me or something.
Please do.
Go for it. A lot of my favorite directors are like more or less glorified tone poets who it's more about rhythm and the emotional flow of something, like Jarmusch, like
Lynch.
Right.
Yeah, like there's a lot of these guys who Baby Driver is another phenomenal movie where people are like, none of these people are real characters. I'm like, yeah, no, they're toys to be played with in the motion poetry that is just one giant car chase scene. There's literally nothing in Dead Man that couldn't be staged, right? There's very few scenes that involve more than 2 or 3 people. I can get really pretentious with it and get into it's more or less a retelling of Dante's Inferno with, the spiritual advisor walking a man through the stages of hell and ending with the transition into purgatory. There's a whole reading of it that, oh shit, I just forgot his name. Right there in the beginning. God, the guy that plays Marty McFly's dad, Back to the Future.
Yeah.
What the hell is his name?
Crispin Glover again.
Crispin Glover, thank you.
Yeah.
There's a whole reading of the beginning of that movie where Crispin Glover is the boatman. He is the Grim Reaper, ushering him into hell. The movie is also damn near perfectly symmetrical. It's almost exactly 120 minutes long, and you begin with the journey, the transition, entering the town, getting shot, going through the trials, right up to the end when he's shot again. They enter the native village. He does the next transition out of the movie. Jarmusch put a lot of thought into a movie that feels haphazard and lost a lot of money. Somehow the dude only spent $8 million and lost 7. I mean, respect right there. Made a movie that no one wanted to see, but pretentious assholes like me. And but it's got a good tail to it.
Yeah, right.
And yes, in general, it's less fun overall to talk about than Ghost Dog, which is
Ghost Dog. Yeah, there's a Ghost Dog actually made money, surprisingly.
Yeah.
I was just looking at this yesterday. I think it was like $2 or $3 million, and it made 9 or 10. So it may be his most successful movie, possibly.
Yeah. Quite possibly.
I enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed Ghost Dog. I mean, when I saw it years ago.
Honest to God, the drain plug assassination never fails to get a laugh out of me.
There's a lot going on in that movie, and so let me ask the people who have not already asked this, because I talked to Tracy about it. But so do you recall there's this scene where he's got Rashomon, he's got the book Rashomon, and I think it's right when he dies, and it just shows the book sail into frame, land on the ground, and then sit there for 3 seconds. And it's the most bizarre. It looks like something that got cut out and then accidentally got stuck back in. But I think that's something that David Lynch and Jarmusch both do, where you can't always tell if something is a mistake or if it's a move. That's what I really like about their work.
No, Jarmusch isn't going to leave it in there. He is nothing if not how do I put this? He is a savage self-editor. His movies don't always have a lot of money, and they don't always have the money to look as pretty. Look, let's be honest. Ghost Dog kind of looks like he taped over a VHS tape to make it. Despite being made 4 years after Dead Man, it's doesn't look great, but his editing is very tight. He doesn't leave stuff on an accident.
God, was that real? Oh my God, that is crazy. I did not realize that. I didn't realize that Dead Man was made before Ghost Dog.
Yeah, if I remember right, Dead Man was 95 and Ghost Dog was 99, right?
2000, or that's the release date. But yeah, that's true. Yeah, so for those of you who haven't seen Ghost Dog, it's the story of a guy who played by Forrest Whitaker, who's a kid, and he's living on the streets of, I assume it's New York, right? Or is it LA? I feel it doesn't really.
I think it's supposed to be the Italian mob, so you'd have to assume Chicago or New York.
New York. So he's just like a kid who lives in the city, and he gets attacked by a couple white punks, and then this mafioso saves him, and he becomes the mafioso's like hitman, or as he would say, retainer, which is where the whole Way of the Samurai bit comes in. And I don't know, Aaron, do you want to say again what you said about Hagakure? Because I think that's important here.
Oh, sure. All right. So throughout this film, in voiceover work, Forrest Whitaker is quoting passages from this book called The Hagakure, or The Way of the Samurai, which is, how to live one's life as though you are a samurai, is the simplest description I can give it. And when this movie came out, at the time I was working at Barnes and Noble, and what I found fascinating was the uptick in sales for that book for a very specific demographic that I would describe as proto Jim Shapiro college freshman.
Oh God!
It's who took themselves and their perceived intellectual capacity very seriously, to the point of self-flagellation.
Right.
So
right. Yeah. And just to give the context for that. So the book itself is the distillation of conversations between two actual samurai in the 17th, pretty sure it's the 17th century, it might be the 18th century in Japan. But the problem is then much later, I want to say it was like before and during World War II, there was a guy, Yukio Mishima, who took it up and made it like a nationalist businessman kind of thing, which is where all of the Ben Shapiro, proto Ben Shapiro's, I want to be a Jedi because that's a thing I can be in the modern world. Yeah, and then ironically, like if you see the movie, I mean, spoilers, it's 22 years old, but if you see the movie, the end scene is Forrest Whitaker basically letting his daimyo or whatever kill him rather than be insubordinate. He's a retainer to the end. It's about selflessness, which I don't know, like I think those guys were just projecting on that entire movie, because I don't know how you could see that movie and the takeaway be, let's be a samurai and a businessman and like fuck over little guys. That's not what was happening in the movie. No. I don't know.
Look, I don't have to tell you that Bushido has always been about very, powerful leaders who got where they were through skullduggery, convincing everyone else to follow a very strict moral code.
Oda Nobunaga was a piece of shit. Like if you read about him, he's awful. I mean, they're all awful, but the thing is, like, Nobunaga and Tokugawa were both like those kind of rich guys, and then Hideyoshi was like this, who was kind of one of Nobunaga's generals, and he was the middle guy before the Tokugawa shogunate. He was actually like a commoner. He was like one of the generals. But yeah, most of the time it's just like, how do we hoodwink all of these good Buddhists into dying for us?
Yeah, Tokugawa Ieyasu was the original like Loki, right? Like he's the dude who got where he is less on the battlefield and more with a polite smile and the dagger behind his back. He was very good at convincing other people to defect at the last minute. But
also if you as I mean, again, not seeing the movie, just speaking strictly to the research point, if your self-image and your identity is as a samurai, and that implies certain attitudes and certain necessities, distinctly possible you're going to die. So turning that into a virtue, turning that into something that you can focus on, is a way of coping.
Right.
That's one of the reasons that Buddhism grabbed on, that particular aspect of Buddhism grabbed on to that class so hard, because it gives you a way to wrap your head around the unface, something you can't face, by
and actually
sticking your hand in it.
Right. And actually there's a lot of crossover too. Like the guy who wrote Hagakure, or the older guy who's most of the quotes from that supposedly come from him. He wanted, when his lord died, he actually wanted to kill himself in solidarity with his lord, and the daimyo refused. And so he was allowed to become a Buddhist monk, to retire and become a Buddhist monk. And like during this, supposedly when these conversations were taking place, he was at a temple. But for those of you who don't know anything, like listeners who don't know anything about samurai, and I would find it very difficult to believe that many of our listeners don't know anything about samurai, but maybe some don't. There's actually a pretty good, I mean, it's like pop history documentary, but there's actually a pretty good one on Netflix called Age of the Samurai, Battle for Japan, and they do a good job of just talking about like.
Is that good? I've seen it like 400 times and haven't got around to watching it.
Aaron was watching it, as I recall.
It's Joe. I think you nailed it perfectly. I mean, it is History Channel light. It's it's made to entertain more so than inform. Like, I mean, it's the subject headings of a chapter of a book about Nobunaga, for example.
Yeah, like it's the very broad strokes.
If you want to, I'm personally a big fan of Musashi. So.
Now, the most important philosopher we have to discuss in order to make sense of Ghost Dog is the contemporary philosopher RZA, the real creative force behind this movie.
And so many other amazing things. I mean, so this is
guy who more than anyone else is responsible for fusing like Asian themes into hip hop culture and creating something that I would argue is an entirely separate cultural touchstone. The whole Black Samurai concept.
Yeah.
Coming so much out of that Wu-Tang Clan. RZA goes on to, obviously he also would go on to make the the
Afro
Iron
Samurai
Fist. Afro Samurai, the Iron Fist, the man with the Iron Fist. I think he scored Kill Bill 1 and 2, right? Like,
I think you're right. Yeah, I think he did.
Like pretty much anything with a hip hop Asian influence, like RZA is the one there, just as forging all of it. Turned an entire generation of young Black men into anime fans. Like,
well, and I think it actually, there is something to what Wendy was saying that fits into this, because if you're stuck in this particular social and political reality, like you want to make sense of that in a way that makes your struggle noble. I mean, I'm sure it's noble already, but that like gives you a narrative that you can put yourself in. So I think that makes total sense. What about you, Tracy? Was that the first time you saw Ghost Dog?
It was the first time I've seen Ghost Dog all the way through in one sitting. So
were you not a fan? Is that what you're saying?
No. I just think I had like caught it like off and on whenever I had like been around people who were watching it. I think that one of the things that I like the most that I'd be curious about to learn more about in the future is like the piece from the book that seems to match up with the little girl who carries the lunchbox, how the very last piece is talking about someone with the lunchbox that they destroy after they collect the flowers. Because I think that the little girl and, sharing the books with her, that she is such a ghost dog light, like a little ghost dog character. Like, so I thought that she was really interesting.
Yeah, so the little girl and the vendor in the park are both come directly from the French movie this is based on, the name of which is completely escaping me.
I didn't know it was based on a French movie. That's crazy.
Well, I don't know that it's credited. Let's put it that way.
Okay, I gotcha.
But I mean, like the story, like there's no like the samurai thing. It's definitely like RZA getting a hold of a French movie, going, "No, I can do this better."
Yeah, well, and that thing you're talking about, Tracy, is a very common. Oh my God, the Japanese escapes me, but it's like the transience of life and reality, and like the things that humans create. And so I actually looked that up, and of course my version of Hagakure that I got amongst the Ben Shapiro wannabes. But it's like you make this box, this lunch box being like a bento box is how you could think about it for an event. And then when you're done with it, it just gets destroyed and forgotten. And then the next thing happens. It's just part of like being alive and dying in that cycle. But yeah. I mean, I definitely think I'm sure there are a lot of people who have not seen this movie. It's worth checking out just because you've got the Riz in it. You've got Forrest Whitaker, bunch of random like old white dudes playing mob guys. I'm trying to think if there's anyone who's like really well known in it otherwise.
Look, Forrest Whitaker is enough reason to watch literally any movie.
That's what I said too. Yeah.
I do also love how Jim Jarmusch, like one of the things, like one of the hallmarks of his movies are exhausted, half-dead people lazily shooting each other. I don't know why, but it's such a common theme in all of his movies. The most Jarmusch-esque scene, the most Jarmusch-ass scene in the entire movie is when the cop pulls over the mafiosos as they're driving along. They're all beat to shit, half dead. They like as an afterthought just shoots the cop driving off. Like, Jesus Christ, man, you shot a woman. I shot a cop.
One of the best parts of it is every time Forrest Whitaker's character shoots someone, he takes his gun and he like does this little twirly thing before he sticks it back. There's definitely some riffing going on in there. And
again, the drain scene, like that
drain scene,
that is just damn good.
Which is foreshadowed with the actual cartoons that the mob guys are watching, which is, there's probably something to say about that, but I feel like I don't know enough about cartoons from the, like the 30s? Those look pretty old, man. I don't know.
Jarmusch is big on cyclical filmmaking, setup, payoff.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
he's how do I put this? I want to put this in the nicest way possible. For someone with the reputation of being like countercultural, he is an unashamed structuralist.
Right. Right. So, I mean, Ghost Dog, there's probably some cultural appropriation going on there, but it's being synthesized into another authentic culture, which is what I think gives that legs. Another movie, speaking of Japanese culture and all of that, we watched the new Godzilla versus Kong. And I don't know, who wants to go first on that? I feel like everybody probably has something to say about that one.
Godzilla versus Kong versus Power Rangers.
Well, I mean, this is made by Legendary, who also did the Pacific Rim movies, and it shows.
Not enough.
A friend of mine made a great comment, and that this is a Kong movie with Godzilla in it.
Yeah.
Because Kong gets all the character work, all the character development, all the sympathy. And in some ways, I found that a little off-putting, being a huge Godzilla nut, but also they spent a lot of time in the last Godzilla movie, King of the Monsters, developing a physicality for him. It's kind of brooding. It's very solid. And in this movie with the CGI, he's very slithery and lizardy. And we saw a lot more Godzilla tongue than we ever did before, with sticking his head up and going,
yeah,
and that seemed weird to me.
Well, they had to make him more flexible because the model they used in the last two doesn't work if you're fighting like something with arms, right? Like the last couple of movies, they how do I put this politely? Like you can't have the Godzilla from the last two movies exchanging punches.
Godzilla doesn't punch. He breath weapons. He stomps and he bites.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Which is why getting a chance to see Kong haul off and cold cock him.
Yeah.
He has absolutely no idea what to do at that point, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, we were never ever going to see another moment of Godzilla leaping into the air to do a flying kick as we did in one of the early.
That's very Showa era, yeah.
Yeah, very Showa era.
But
Godzilla.
now and something that it bugged me while I was watching the movie. And another thing to keep in mind is, of course, we all saw this on a TV. Still, most of us had decent sized TVs, but I also had in the back of my mind how many of these things would have been glossed over for me had I just been sitting in the theater going, with a loud noise and the enormous screen. How many of these things would not have even registered for me? But the fight scenes were too fast. I honestly think they wanted to portray speed and strength and all of that. I think we lost some of the gravity. Comparing that to having literally less than a week later watched Captain America: Civil War.
Uh-huh.
When the helicarriers fall, they fall slowly. There's a weight to them. And I honestly think slowing the fight sequences down a little bit would have given them weight and power and authenticity. It came across looking like a video game, with just boom, 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 and there goes the skyscraper. Skyscrapers take time to fall.
Yeah.
It's
We've
the
all
Pacific
seen
Rim
it.
1 versus Pacific Rim 2 problem.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
don't have them fight at noon. Nothing looks good with the harsh light of day. Like, you can hide a lot of sins at night. 2, slow it down. Like, everyone complained with Pacific Rim 1 that like everything moved too slow, and Del Toro went nuts. He filmed this whole video where he's like, I did the math. Those fists are going at 300 miles an hour.
Yeah.
They're just big and it looks slow. And then they made Pacific Rim 2 without him, and they're like, yeah, it looked like a big. It looked like Rampage, right? Like the old video game where they just rock'em sock'em robot each other.
And I mean, granted, this universe has already told the square cube law to fuck off, but physics still exist.
I will say though, like, I am 100% fine letting physics out the window when we get scenes like Kong hopscotching his way across the naval fleet to get to the aircraft carrier. That's this is the shit that I want.
Well, the sea fight was fantastic from beginning to end. It was the Hong Kong stuff that made you like going, wait, let me see if I understand this correctly. Godzilla is blasting a hole to the Earth's
the center of the Earth.
No. See, that shit doesn't. Was it dumb? That shit didn't bother me. The fact that they went to the center of the Earth was dumb. That didn't need to be there. They went. They wrote in the fucking whole Lost World center of the Earth thing to find a fucking axe. Like the axe couldn't have been on the fucking island.
Well,
I think rid of Skull Island for no reason, so they could shoehorn in a whole plot about going to the center of the. Fuck the humans. No one wants to watch fucking humans in a monster movie.
I'll give it that, but I will throw out something for the Hollow Earth thing. They have established that Godzilla is king of the monsters. Kong will not be safe. They plan the shipping to try and keep him away from Godzilla's known haunts. So we can't keep him on Skull Island. We have to put him somewhere else. Well, therefore, I mean, I'm not saying it's a great decision.
It's either this or they're going to have to launch his ass to the moon, and that's
they had to come up with something.
Well, okay,
Godzilla drilling his way to the center of the Earth and using the ship as the defibrillator were the two scientific things. But they were just a little too far for me. But the thing that I did not believe in this movie, and there are giant monkeys and giant lizards, is Millie Bobby Brown being able to run into her dad on the streets in post-monster fighting Hong Kong in the middle of a natural disaster. They just ran into each other on the street.
See, my problem was everything involving Millie Bobby Brown being in the movie. I love her. That whole plot line is dumb as shit.
Oh, okay.
None of that needed to be there.
Let's wind up Aaron, because Aaron has.
Here's my 45-minute version of this movie. Right, King Kong is on Skull Island. He's protected by the hurricane. The hurricane falls apart and consumes the island. Kong has to flee the island. Godzilla pursues Kong across the continents, tearing up a bunch of cities. Monarch has this long dormant plan to have a giant fucking stupid robot show up. The two of them tag team the robot. End of movie. The thing's 45 minutes long, and you get 2 human characters.
Yeah, and that you've nailed it. The weakest link of the whole film are the humans. I am a huge fan of Julian Desson, who plays Josh, the New Zealand guy with the van. He serves zero purpose in this movie. There's no reason for him to be in there other than, hey, New Zealand actors can work because their country gives a shit about the pandemic. So we know that he's safe, but.
Quick shout out to Hunt for the Wilder People, one of the most underrated movies ever made.
It's so good. It is so good. But we shouldn't have to discover cool little factoids about characters like the scientist Ren Shirazawa is Professor Shirazawa's son. Basically the pilot of the Titan.
The pilot of Mecha Godzilla is the son of the man who sacrificed himself to save Godzilla. And we had to find out in an online article about goddamn Easter eggs.
Right.
Why did we have 10 minutes of New Zealand dude in the store trying to find out who buys bleach? Why didn't we find out more about that guy?
Do you know what everyone wants more of in their kaiju movies? Podcast subplots.
I gotta say, it's a tradition in kaiju movies to have the scientist who explains everything. I think the 21st century spin on that being paranoid podcaster dude is there to do exposition. I kind of bought that.
How much more interesting would it have been if you never meet him?
He's just hear the podcast.
Yeah, he's just some crazy crackpot theorist who people are listening to. He just happens to be right all the time.
He will say doing that could have been a really good framing device of we need to dump. You use him as a framing device to dump exposition, and that way you can do what we all wanted to see: get rid of 90% of the humans.
Well, especially at the beginning of the movie, they do use him as a point of view character to introduce us to a lot of the things going on. So he does serve a useful purpose in that portion of the plot, because otherwise there's no reason for us to see that. You'd have to rewrite that scene as Ren Shirazawa and someone else going to that facility in order to see that. So that's why I'm willing to buy his character. Like I said, I kind of liked him, but if you had to have Millie Bobby Brown and you had to have him, the two of them hook up, go, why can't he be the one to be hacking on the computer? He's already proven himself to be fairly technically adept. And if he's the one who made the choice to pour the whiskey to short out the computer, it becomes so much more meaningful.
Yeah.
If he stopped, if he's like, that much shorter, much more meaningful, much more focused.
Well, and also, he's also one of the very few characters in this in the whole movie that has a personal stake. That everyone has a stake of, we don't want to be turned into paste by giant monsters. But there are very, very few characters in this movie that have a personal reason to be involved in this. You have the child, we have Kong's kitten child, and we have Ren Shirazawa. Everybody else has superficial stakes in this movie.
Having the adoptive mom there, basically, and Aaron and I were discussing this earlier. He's like, totally get rid of Hollow Earth guy. I'm like, then replace him with Godzilla dad.
Yeah.
You do need someone for her to talk to so that she has a reason to do the exposition about Kong.
Right. You need
someone has to be there for her to talk to. Right. Talking to the kid isn't going to do it.
Right. You have to have that. The reason why Doctor Who has companions is to have somebody there to ask, "What is it, Doctor?"
Why is he doing that?
Yes.
So, like one of the biggest problems with this movie for me is that they're trying to do a slow burn reveal, and the audience is an hour and a half in front of the narrative.
Yeah.
Even before we saw the toy pictures,
When the trailer, everyone saw the trailer, we're like, Godzilla's in this movie.
Yes,
Yeah.
we saw.
Yeah.
We were the day the trailer came out. We were on Daikaiju's Facebook stream, going, "Okay, so at 42 seconds, look in the upper right hand corner of the screen."
There's one thing that absolutely gave it away for me, even beyond that one scene. There is a scene where they cut to Ren Shirazawa standing menacingly in front of a backlit blue and white robot schematic. It's there for a split second, and I swear to you, it is an exact recreation of a scene in Pacific Rim Uprising, where the evil mad scientist who is making evil Jaegers, thank you, making evil Jaegers to fight kaiju and humans, and I'm like, okay, so they're basically redoing Pacific Rim Uprising. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, he
Right.
caught
Like,
that one.
also,
I caught the Mechagodzilla looking down over the people running into the subway, and I caught the metal tail going across the screen in one of the cuts.
Yeah.
But also, like, why are we introducing another shady global organization? Like, we
There's so many
already
of them.
have Monarch, so we
Yeah.
have to. God damn, we have to explain what Monarch is doing during all this movie, because they play no part in this movie whatsoever. We introduce another. Apparently, Monarch, they're just in charge of being like global FEMA.
Yeah.
Like, if there's a lizard that tears up your city, like Monarch shows up with tents. That's what they do now. Like, we already have established that they're shady as fuck, that they have split loyalties, and that they're not 100% sure whether, like, I don't know, giant monster, good, bad?
Yeah.
But instead, we introduce this, like, shady megacorp, which, whatever. I mean, the giant pyramid in the middle of Hong Kong, I'm not going to lie, that was cool. I like that. That was very Shadowrun. Right? That was
There's one of those in Memphis if you ever want to go check it out.
I've been. It's a Bass Pro now.
Yep.
No, and honest to God, the Hong Kong fight, the night part, I loved. I loved because it was just like a straight up WWE. When Kong like dukes off the side of he gets a running start, jump, kicks off the side of the skyscraper, and just haymakers Godzilla. I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah, this is the movie I want. Just have them. Honest to God, what it reminded me of was the trailer fight from Kill Bill Volume 2, when it's Daryl Hannah and Uma Thurman fighting in a trailer with like no room to maneuver, so they're just like elbowing and beating the shit out of each other. Like, that's what that was, with them like crammed into downtown Hong Kong with all the neon and the shit's exploding, and there's a giant fucking pyramid for no reason. Like, even when the pyramid blows up, and like Mechagodzilla looks like shit. Honest to God.
He really does. He had to die pretty quick. Yeah,
that
he looked
thing
like ass.
straight up looked like the Megazord from the first Power Rangers movie.
Yes,
it was good to see, because I was looking at I saw the toys and I was like, what are all the little spine thingies? And apparently they're like flux capacitors. And I'm like, yeah, you didn't need that. The face was weird.
Oh yeah. No, it's where it's his routers, because you download energy. Remember the part of the movie where they upload radiation from the core via, I don't know, the internet?
I'm not quite sure what was going on there.
Yeah, I guess they found the magical code for radiation magic, and then they uploaded the radiation magic via, that internet connection that runs from the center of the earth to Hong Kong.
And totally, I totally think it's a wonderful idea to take a completely unknown energy source and plug it directly into your brain using kaiju neural network, because there's no possible way that could go wrong.
My biggest letdown, and I don't know, why do I do this to myself? Why do I think things are going to be better than they are? I assumed that Mechagodzilla was going to be a cyborg, that they were going to build it out of the parts of the monsters that died in Destroy All Monsters. It turns out I was 1% right. But
Destroy
I mean,
All Destroy All Monsters was a Toho movie from 1968.
Oh shit, what did they call it? The last Godzilla movie.
Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Okay,
King of the
I just was you've confused the crap out of me now.
Like I thought they were gonna like kludge it together with technological parts and make like a cyborg like kaiju out of like, you know, Ghidorah and like all these different parts, and I'm like, oh, that's how they'll make it look. And said no, it just turns out you don't get to see it, but crammed inside somewhere is just Ghidorah, one of the Ghidorah skulls.
No, the Ghidorah skull was it was they were using it to transmit. I don't think he was actually physically in the.
No, I think the idea was that there's two of them because there's the one that was
they
the
only
second
bought,
connection.
The creepy guy only bought one.
I could have sworn they said the way that they were controlling it was that one skull was inside the robot and one skull was inside the thing. Anyway, maybe I'm still overthinking it.
Yeah, I always thought it was a robot. I mean, that's mostly because, again, I've got a long history with the Toho movies, and there have been several different versions of Mechagodzilla, including in the anime, he's a city.
Right.
Because that totally makes sense.
Look, I mean, yeah, like I don't need these movies to make sense. That's the thing that keeps making me nuts too. I don't quit trying to explain shit. I don't need an explanation. You can put a fucking pyramid in the middle of Hong Kong. I don't care. Just say, that's always been there.
But that's a legendary thing that, and I've said this since the first legendary Godzilla movie, is the differences between Shin Godzilla and the legendary Godzilla movies. In the Japanese, the Toho movies, we created Godzilla. Godzilla's our fault. We fucked up a lizard, and everything else we've gone places we shouldn't. Right. And so the idea is that it's kind of our fault, whereas the American versions, the legendary ones, have always been, oh, they're always here. We couldn't do anything about it, which you can go a great deal into American culture and Japanese culture. As to which way looks at it. Of course, the Americans are like, oh, of course, we couldn't do anything.
We had to drop the bomb. There's nothing we could have done about that. Yeah,
Godzilla is honestly one of my all-time favorite movies because it's like
it's a great political satire.
Well, it's one of the most Japanese movies ever made because the entire. I mean, obviously, you know, all Japanese Godzilla movies are reacting to something. And like that was clearly Fukushima. Like,
Daiichi. That was clearly Fukushima Daiichi.
And like, but what I love about it is that in the end, it's like the victory of the middle manager, right? It's not a story about people going rogue. It's a matter of middle managers stepping up, like senior management has failed us. We must step in and succeed where senior management has failed us here in middle management. We will form a coherent response and take responsibility and win the day.
After the fourth time they went into a meeting, I was falling out of my seat. And when they changed into their color coordinated coveralls, I'm like, oh no, we're getting serious now, man. The thing I liked about Shin Godzilla, back to why the Toho Godzillas and the Japanese Godzillas are very different, is in Shin Godzilla, the world gets involved. The Americans show up. What is the Americans' plan for dealing with Godzilla? Let's come in, take over the operation, and blow shit up. You cannot tell me that's not what would happen.
Yeah, that's totally what would happen.
It's totally what would happen. And
Absolutely.
It's the one where the American response is to send in like a hovercraft with laser guns.
and to want to take over. Oh no, the UN, the Japanese shouldn't be running this. No, the UN, the Americans will handle this. And it was I was just dying because, and of course, I was one of 5 people in the theater who thought that was funny.
Yeah.
Everyone else was just like, huh, what? I'm like, oh my God, do you not see how this is incredibly politically layered?
Yeah.
So as the legendary ones, it's, well, humans are reactive. These creatures have always been there, just we didn't know about it, which is very American. It's totally not our fault.
Yeah.
Right, which is also like the metaphor for oh my god, making Skull Island a Vietnam movie was just like such a beautiful move. Like just tonally and so like, oh, King Kong is literally the Viet Cong. Okay, boom, got it. Metaphor done. We can move on. It was great.
And again, so you've got that, and then you've also got an entire, as if the primitives in the previous Kong movies weren't bad enough. You have a scene where he's literally being brought across the sea on a boat in shackles. Yeah. I'm just like, ow, that's not gonna play. There's accepting that there is baggage, and there's just wearing it as a hat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did think that like shackling and drugging him felt unnecessary.
Yeah.
Right? Like just make it so that the girl convinces him to come. Just have him look bored, or hey, how great would a scene be if he's literally just like sitting there cross-legged on a cargo ship looking nervously at the water. Like, oh shit, I've never been in the ocean before. Oh.
Right, yeah. and because he after you've watched him throw a tree through the hologram screen, and then like the next scene you see there's an entire line, like he's been doing this like every Tuesday,
like throwing pencils in the ceiling. Yeah,
right. We go out every afternoon at 3:00 and we poke a hole in the ceiling so that the small monkeys understand that we know what's going on.
Like, yeah, honest to God, like you could have got a great scene of the little girl just like trying to calm him down, right? Like he's getting nervous out on the ocean.
Getting seasick, and none of us want to see that much puke.
Oh, that'd be funny. I'm not gonna lie, I'd watch that. That'd be funny. I don't necessarily want to see it. I just want to see everyone react to it.
I did like
brown alert.
I did like that. The taking the tropes and working with them. Kong has always had a thing for blonde girls or blonde women, and having that be a child was an interesting. Let's take that and spit it in a different way. I also just about fell over when they put him in a net and put helicopters on it, because that exact same scene happens in King Kong versus Godzilla, except it's balloons.
My favorite part of this movie was looking over at Tracy when they did that and just watching her facial expression when they're like carrying him with the double helicopters.
Because
I love shit like that. Like that stuff never bothers me. Where it's like, yeah, throw physics out the window.
Well, no, it was a direct callback to the previous the Showa era King Kong versus Godzilla. They transport him with a net and balloons. It was exactly you were supposed to catch that. Something else, prior movies, and again, this is one of those things that I'm not sure if this would have registered had it been on a big screen, was, again, my friend Cam, my other kaiju fan Cam, who she and I were both the next day, we're just like on text all day. Musically, this movie just didn't do it for me. Nothing stood out. There wasn't anything, no themes, no mighty music. I mean, there was mighty music, I guess, because I didn't notice a lack of it. But afterwards, somebody said, if somebody said, how was the music? I would have been like, I guess it was there. Like I retain absolutely no memory of the musical themes of the movie.
In memory of the recently deceased DMX, honest to God, if the moment the two of them teamed up to take down Mechagodzilla, they just started playing X Gonna Give It To You. Come on. Oscar. That would have won an Oscar.
That would have been great. I'm looking at the IMDb for this movie, and like I registered that Ronnie Chang and Lance Reddick and like who else, like all these like fairly well-known actors were in it. But I mean, do you all know Shin Oguri? He was in Diner, which is a pretty cool. And he was in like the new Lupin the Third movie. But he was like the Ron Watkins character who got fried by Mechagodzilla in this one. But yeah, like the music thing is definitely, and I mean, like I see these anytime I watch anything with especially Godzilla in it, I just see every kaiju as like this big metaphor. And so if I'm watching it and just trying to figure out, okay, so you've got like anti-nuclear war versus racism is bad, and then they team up to fight Mechagodzilla representing like corporate malfeasance. Okay, I can kind of I can project my SJW shit onto this. I'll watch it. It's fine.
I wish I could. If it had been made as a Japanese movie, I would totally get that. I don't think that level of self-knowledge is present in the legendary Godzilla universe.
I don't think so either.
No. It's like when anybody else see that interview where like the guys who made Game of Thrones said that like themes are for children's assignments or something to those lines. Yeah. Where it's like it became clear that they didn't give a shit about, narrative or themes or, good writing. Yeah. Same with these legendary monster movies, right? Like Joe, you are applying way too like I think honest to God, like Skull Island had some pretty, solid theming going on because they built it from the beginning. This movie, no, you're not going to find.
Well, you could always do the postmodern thing where you can be like, it doesn't really matter what the tone is. It's about mood. It's about what I feel, not about what people intended. So that's kind of what I just landed on.
But even there, I don't think there's enough to play with there. Like, I'm the guy that could sit here and apply queer theory to anything if you want to try hard enough. But good luck with this movie. Like characters exist for no reason, plots exist for no reason, the center of the earth exists for no reason.
Well, they'd established that in King of the Monsters, but because that's
right.
And this is one of those.
King of the Monsters, they established that that's how Godzilla gets around. That he's going through these underground tunnels.
And
right?
I do have to say that pre-marketing, that movie, Monarch Sciences. We were talking about Lost a little bit earlier and alternate reality games, and Monarch Sciences did a lot of viral marketing. They had people interviewing people about had they seen Godzilla at Comic-Con. They had people spraying anti-kaiju, like basically spraying people with water at Comic-Con. But they had a website where you could track Godzilla, and he's headed towards such and such. This means there's going to be a trailer dropped at Comic-Con. There's going to be a trailer dropped at this. And at one point, literally, the final tracking, you could track him for a week. And at one point, it disappeared and reappeared further in the Indian Sea. And I'm like, that didn't happen on accident. They're setting us up for some kind of hollow earth thing. And then 6 months later, I'm like, no, it wasn't a glitch. They were trying to set that up for us.
Right. Yeah, and they were insinuating there's this network of tunnels, and you would assume they're underwater because that's how Kong gets, or that's how Godzilla gets around. And instead, we find out that, there's just a series of wormholes that magic warp you to a big empty spot in the middle of the earth that looks like the Savage Land. And then you can warp your way back. Why did they need Kong? It's a hole. They go in the hole, they fall down the hole, and they fall with the monkey. The monkey ran into a hole they already dug. They already found the hole. Why do they need Kong? He'll show us how to get there. They showed him how to get there.
They need someone to carry the big axe, Chris, clearly. That's really all it is. It's just bitch work for the giant monkey.
They needed an excuse to get a giant axe.
Right.
I guess they needed some excuse to give him a happily ever after. Fuck, I don't know. Just have him set up in the middle of the Amazon at the end. Who cares? Well, just have a great scene where Kong and Godzilla exhaustedly look at each other, and they do that. God, I fucking hate Jurassic World. Right? Terrible movie. Right up until the last 10 minutes. How did they didn't earn it at all? But the T-Rex and the Velociraptor teaming up, and then they literally bow to each other you fought well, warrior, and then they go up. I fucking love that. Have that moment, the two of them nod to each other, and they just come to an agreement. We're okay, you get Asia, I get the Americas. We're gonna split this bitch up.
My version of that in the movie was you may have the land, but I will have the sea.
Yeah.
Right.
But I will point out that what body language wise, what happened was that Kong bowed.
Yeah.
Effectively, Kong acknowledged, because Godzilla doesn't want to kill, he wants to dominate. And once Kong put the axe down and just stood there, Godzilla was like, right, done.
Yeah.
And then he took off.
Well,
So
also-
that was kind of there, but yeah, I did the same thing.
Yeah, there's also too much work of like, oh, these aren't bad things. These aren't Godzilla's not a bad person.
He's
King
just a
Kong's not a
thing.
bad. Like, we don't need that. We don't need them to have like we don't need them to be good or bad. Again, just
Right.
have them fighting in cities and it's fucking shit up and people react to it. Like I don't like they're trying so hard to make them like, you know, heroes or and like yeah, that goes back to you know the
Right.
old monster movies too, and you know asking the fairies to ask Mothra for help and all that kind of shit. But
Well,
one of the
well,
rules-
yeah.
One of the rules that one of the rules that Toho gave Legendary when dealing with Zilla was, you know, they said he should not emote because we view him as sort of like this larger than nature itself sort of thing. So he doesn't. There's nothing that would make him care enough to emote.
Yeah, that's actually it was actually part of the licensing agreement was that this is how this is done, because he's more like a mountain than
Right.
he is an interactive character. And we go again back to the character of Godzilla being created as a response to trauma. Godzilla always acting as our response to trauma. I mean, we've sat through Godzilla versus the Smog Monster, which traumatized me as a small child. But again, using Godzilla has it's not like the Toei movies, not like the Gamera movies, where it's always, you know, Gamera friend of little children, but sometimes he's misunderstood. Godzilla is just there. Sometimes we can kind of shove him, influence him to act in our best interests, but he's not doing it because he wants to. He's doing it because there's a benefit there.
also, like the problem with all these movies is that the people who want to kill all of the Titans are like the most logical people in the movies. Like, yeah, it's totally like 100%. The humans should want to kill these things, right? Like they're a big ass problem. That's fine. You don't have to make the people be friends with you want to have like one little girl who's friend with Kong. Awesome. Great. You want to have Godzilla like show up, inadvertently do good by killing a monster and then fuck off back to the sea. Yeah. Whatever. You know, he's Cthulhu, right? He shows up from the sea, does something and leaves. Why was he there? Who the fuck knows? He decided to show up.
Well, and that's the thing is where we go back to this movie was basically a Kong movie with Godzilla in it. We're totally supposed to empathize with Kong. We are totally supposed to, and they spend so much screen time. Humanizing is a bad word, but getting us to sympathize with him.
Well, yeah, he has a
Godzilla's
face.
Yeah,
Right.
he has a face, and there's so much close up of his eyes. I noticed a ridiculous amount of not just the full face, but just the eyes. It was gorgeous CGI. But again, they went back to the, like I said, the flailing. I'm like, at one point I looked at Aaron and said, did they like burn out his breath weapon? Did it just like stop working? Because there was an entire 10 minutes.
I was wondering about that too. Yeah.
He just wasn't using it, and I'm like, why?
Yeah.
And what's the okay? I know they did in the legendaries. It's a thing in the legendary movies, the kiss of death, where they breath weapon down each other's throats. But that's a little. There's some questionable.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can
There's some questionable framing going on there.
So when like inevitably when you have two anything that can use a beam anything in a movie, the first thing the special effects team wants to do is beam versus beam, because it looks cool, you get to show off your lighting, and it's so easy. It's so easy to do because you just add some particle effects, you run one continuous effect, and you color it differently halfway through. It's in Harry Potter, it's in these movies, fucking Dragon Ball, they would just do that like every 45 seconds because again, it's easy to animate. Like, yeah, it's gonna be there, and that doesn't necessarily bother me, but it is always boring where it's just like, okay, we're gonna get a visual representation of one of them being slightly stronger than the other, whatever.
But, no, that's not what I'm talking about. There were times where literally like one was down and the other would grab his jaw and breath weapon into his mouth, and I'm
spit
like,
into his mouth. Yeah,
that's questionable. That was an imagery I didn't need to think about. And it's
like you said, he's into domination.
Apparently, yes.
We should all look that up on Reddit, because then it'll give us a chance to use the best Godzilla meme of all time, this one, which I've found to use so many times in my work in higher education.
That is your favorite. That is true.
People who are listening to the audio, it is basically the Godzilla suit on a big wheelbarrow having been transported, but it says Godzilla had a stroke trying to read this and fucking died.
Very, very, a lot of utility to that one. Well, okay, so before Tracy, did you have anything you wanted to add to Godzilla?
I think you all said it all so nicely. I don't have anything to add to that. It's very nicely done.
We're huge nerds. We started picking it apart 10 minutes after the movie was over.
Oh yeah.
Well, and once again, the fleet thing, what I loved about the fleet fight is that, like, so all fucking nerds love to play that game when you're kids, and it's like, what if Freddy fought, a Tyrannosaurus Rex, right? And the answer
is wins, Scarlet Witch or Superman.
Right. And what that acknowledges, the answer is always, what's the venue, right? Like if a T-Rex is going to fight a megalodon, the question is, are they in water?
Right.
And so, yeah, exactly. So like, yeah, you put King Kong on a fucking ship, he's at a great, huge goddamn disadvantage. Like, I also like the fact that they didn't magically teach him how to swim. Though that would have been funny if all of a sudden they're like, oh shit, who taught the monkey how to swim? And he's just arm over arm.
Swimming 700 miles per hour. Yeah.
Yes.
One final thought on the movie that came to mind is, I just love the fact that David, or what's his name? Director of Tenet.
Chris Nolan.
Yeah. I love the fact that Chris Nolan's like, I will save cinema with my overhyped movie, and what apparently is going to save cinema is Big Lizard Punch Big Monkey.
Once we're fully vaccinated, if it's at all possible, we are going to see this in the theater.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Not right now.
I just had this thought, and this might be incredibly dumb, but this is the kind of monster movies I want to see. What if instead of Monarch moving Kong around, you just had this scene where like the hurricane takes over the island, he has to get off. Kong looks out and he sees like all these wrecked World War II ships. Because we established it's just been wrecked. And we get this scene of King Kong in the hollowed out wreck of a World War II aircraft carrier with like a paddle that he's made out of a destroyer. And he's just paddling it, trying to stay upright, trying to get off
Pacific
the island.
Rim in the boat.
Yeah. And then Godzilla attacks his giant raft. Like, I don't know. I would love that shit.
Yeah.
Establish the tool building early.
I want to see more of the MonsterVerse movies, and I hope that the box office warrants the studios making another one. I have no idea what that's going to be because they're rapidly running out of kaiju to introduce. But I mean,
that's why there was no post-credit scene in this one, is because they have come to the end of a story arc. They don't know if there's going to be another one. If there is, they wanted to leave the box open because obviously it's going to be a couple of years while we figure out what filmmaking looks like.
Now,
we'll get something, but I think you're going to get another reboot. I don't think you're going to have a continuation of these stories.
I want them to, and I want them to go bug shit nuts and do the gargantuas.
Oh, God.
Aaron, you might be alone here.
Yeah.
I love kaiju movies, and we're just like, nope, not. Hey, look, Daikaiju is showing a whole bunch of and so that's when we're eating dinner.
Yeah.
I'm still kind of surprised they haven't ever tried to do, at least recently, like a crossover with. I don't know if the genre is still technically kaiju. What is the like Ranger Force Power Ranger that form a giant? What is it?
Tokusatsu. Well, Tokusatsu is the special effects. It's basically a special effects show. So any of the Power Rangers or anything like that is under the Tokusatsu genre. Now, is there a specific term for when like they combine like the Transformers? That I don't know.
Right. Yeah. See, I wonder if that's like if someone's going to do that at one point of have like the Power Ranger
Jet Jaguar. They could do Jet Jaguar.
Hey,
like
we got to get back to watching Kamen Rider.
Oh man, I did watch Invincible, some of it. You're right, that's really good.
Yeah. Did you watch the most recent one?
Oh yeah.
I just watched the first 2 episodes. I need to watch some more of it.
Now,
It does keep getting better.
Did you read the original comic, and do you know where things are going?
I haven't.
I think I've read. Did it come out like 5 years ago? How long has it been
A
out?
long time ago.
I think I read like the first 2 issues of it, but
Okay, content warning. I will point out for those who are interested in seeing the show. I understand that there is. I don't know which episode it is, but I understand there's a scene of sexual assault.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
In one of the. So
Yikes.
just to be prepared.
Yeah.
But
Content warning.
Also, just lots of like gibbing, like if animated brains hitting walls.
Oh my God! They like. I feel really bad for anyone who was not somewhat prepared for that scene, where the dad just loses his shit. Because I mean, I kind of knew it was coming, and I still was not. I did not feel prepared for it.
I guess spoiler warning if you're gonna watch Invincible episode 1.
Yeah, spoilers.
But just in general, like, oh my God, the pun names alone, like it's an Amazon series, and it's 100% designed to be watched with X-ray, because the X-ray will constantly pop up with like giving you the names of some of these characters that are just
right.
Just beautiful. Oh my God. Just little gags. And even the stuff, the throwaway stuff in the show, just stuff like, Mark, get down here. The elephant is robbing a store. And you just cut to him. You never see him fight it. You just see him flying with a dude with an elephant trunk, just dragging it through the sky. Oh, I love that show.
Yeah.
I just love too how they had enough, like Kirkman had enough sense with like the power set for the not Kryptonians. I can't remember what they're called in that continuity. That he stripped away like all the weird power creep Superman bullshit and just made them all straight like self-throwing bricks.
Yeah.
Like no, they're hard to kill and they hit good.
Yes.
Who was it, Aaron, that like 1,000 years ago described Superman as, quote, a brick that throws himself?
I don't recall, but I mean, it's worth watching, but let us not spoil any more for people who have not yet seen the show.
Yeah. And so, I guess we can stop recording now if you want, Chris, if we want to try to figure out somewhere that we want to go.
Yes, I think honestly, before you started talking about Invincible.
Yeah, we can stop. We can stop with Godzilla.
Got anything you want to throw in for your edit purposes here at the end?
Does anyone want to say anything ridiculous that I can turn into the final line? Now's your chance.
Kong should have a dick.
Where is Kong's dick, Chris? That's the real question.
Exactly.
That's going to be the pre-credit vision.
Release the dick cut.
Thank you. That's it for Season 4, Episode 22 of the Gateway Geeks Podcast, Jim Jarmusch versus Kong Dong. Thanks for listening, and don't forget, we are now on Spotify as well as Apple Podcasts. This episode was with Tracy Gomillion, Chris Knetzer, Joe Colburn, Aaron Robb, and Wendy Robb. It was edited by Joe Colburn and produced by Chris and Joe.